What's up, fam? It's Calla from Recalibrate, back with episode 14 of the Lightin Up Podcast. On today's episode, we have my dear sister, one of my very best friends, Lisa Marie, and we are going to be talking about conscious uncoupling with the moon, aka breaking up with the moon. So this episode might bring up some feelings of resistance or anger or just different emotions when you listen to it, and I want to invite you to sit with those emotions and feel them and not just push aside what we're saying because of the feelings that they bring up. A lot of what we're talking about has to do with deep programming and conditioning about the moon, so it's normal that you're going to be feeling feelings when we bring these things up and these issues up and these truths up. So just keep that in mind as you listen. I also want to preface this episode by saying, once again, as always, that it is never my intention to tell you what to do. You can do whatever you want, and I hold space for all differing perspectives, for how you view things. You know, that's your prerogative. You can do whatever you want, and true sovereignty, true freedom is holding space for people to have different perspectives. But that being said, I do like to offer up my perspective on things, or, you know, with the help of Lisa Marie or my guests, I like to offer different perspectives in an effort to help you recalibrate, to change the way you do or think about something. So this is just my perspective. It's just the way I've come to see things, and Lisa Marie has come to see things. So we're not trying to tell you what to do with your life, but we are here to offer something that maybe you haven't thought about before. So again, I invite you to sit with this information, see what feels true to you, take what feels good, leave the rest, and figure out your own path forward. That's really at the heart of what I'm trying to show people, is that there is no one way to do things. You can do whatever you want, just like I can do whatever I want. So thank you for being a part of this process, helping me shed light on different topics and anchor more light and love into this planet. I just want to give my disclaimer that I always give. Nothing on this podcast constitutes legal advice, medical advice, spiritual advice, counseling advice, professional advice, or any sort of advice. This podcast is really just for entertainment and informational purposes only. So I hope that you learned something from this episode. It was a joy to sit down with Lisa Marie. She and I talk about shit like this all of the time, so I'm really grateful that she was willing to put herself out there on such a topic and let the truth of who she is be seen, and for taking the time to sit down with me. Like I said, she's one of my very best friends, and I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys. So that all being said, please grab a candle, some sage, Palo Santo, sacred smoke, whatever you want to participate in this ceremony with me, and let's lighten up together, fam. What's up, fam? It's Calla from Recalibrate, here with my sister Lisa Marie. And today we're going to be talking about breaking up with the moon. So it's a big one. So before we get into it, I think it's always helpful to just take a minute to center into this moment and call our energy back to ourselves with 3 deep breaths wherever you're at. Let's breathe together. So I like to breathe in through my nose and let it out. Again, breathe in through your nose and let it out. Last one, the deepest breath you've had all day. Just want to take a minute to light this candle, call upon the Great Spirit, the Most High, and the higher self of myself, the higher self of Lisa Marie, and the higher self of all of you listening, for us to come together for this conversation and shed light and truth on this world that we live in and this conversation about the moon. I ask that you help us communicate clearly and with love this conversation, and that those listening can receive this conversation with love and feel the truth in their hearts and remember the truth, and that we all may anchor more light and love into this planet with this information.
Calling in all spirits, seen and unseen. A beautiful sacred smoke, spirit of sweetgrass. We ask you, Creator, Great Spirit, to help us to be clear channels for this information to transmit to our brothers and sisters. And may the light of truth illuminate all beings, hearts, minds, and bodies. May golden light rain down upon us and envelop this entire planet with love.
Thank you, Lisa Marie.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you on this conversation. So many of you listening probably do know Lisa Marie, but if you don't, she's one of my very best friends and sisters, and I've learned so much from Lisa Marie, whether it be about just expanding my consciousness or bringing ceremony into every moment, and whether it be food medicine, plant medicine, herb medicine, all the medicines. I just have learned so much from you, and I'm really excited for this conversation, so thank you.
I love you. Kala has been my ride or die bitch the last year and a half through this new way of living that we're in, and I really oftentimes find myself thinking I couldn't do life without you. So.
Oh, I feel the same way. Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. This is a full circle moment for me because I followed you on the internet for years through OG Ashley, Infinite Source Yoga, and then I got to sit with Combo in this room, and then when Coco happened, it just kind of like solidified things for us.
Yeah, we were like, everyone's desperately seeking out who's on the same frequency as them when the world shut down, and we're like, oh, you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So it's been a journey, and then I just remember, I think back to after we sat in ceremony and we were camping about a little over a year ago, mm-hmm. and we had kind of talked about all sorts of like conspiracies and our thoughts on Coco and the pandemic and shit, and then we were sitting by the fire looking up at the moon, and I just was like, do you think the moon's real? And you just so calmly were like, no. And what we meant by that was like that we know the moon is like real in the sense that like it exists, but we just have a lot of questions about.
We have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions about every single thing I've ever been taught or learned.
Yeah.
The moon being the most recent thing up for a lot of debate in our conversations, and really you're just gonna hear like kind of shit that me and Kala just normally talk about when we hang out. Like, this is where our conversation usually lands. And I actually didn't want to do a podcast with Kala, and I was like, I totally support your podcast, girl, but I'm not gonna be on it because
I was like, what about this? We can talk about this. What about this? She was like, no. And then we had this convo about the moon,
and I was like, that's it. That's the one. So. Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh.
So the reason we wanted to talk about this is because no one's really talking about it. Even like when I tried doing a little bit of research ahead of time to this about like, you can find certainly conspiracies about the moon and such, but the spiritual aspect of the moon and like how it relates to women and all of that, which we'll get into, is really why I wanted to talk to you about this. And also, because it's not been spoken about a lot, it is likely going to be, it could be triggering
be triggering.
This could be
Trigger warning.
Trigger warning.
Especially sisters. It's probably, I don't know what your audience consists of mostly, but I know.
I got like 76% women.
Yeah, I figured. So, yeah, ladies, sisters, mamas, people with wombs that bleed, this is probably going to trigger you.
Yeah. But it's all with love. And, like, I think just going into it, I just want to preface that, like, we don't know shit about shit. Like, I ain't never been to space and seen the moon, so I've never been on the moon. I don't know. But part of the fun of life for me is, like you said, questioning absolutely everything and, like, what it means and how it could be, like, they've lied about so much shit. I'm like, why not lie about the moon too? So just know that it's all with love, and we just hope to, like, raise some questions that we can all think about and start the conversation about the fucking moon.
Let's start it. Yeah. I mean, that's really the thing for me is, like, I've always been this way, even before I was, like, the spiritual community, which whatever that even means. But,
yeah.
I've been in this kind of scene of, like, what new age, old age, whatever you want to call it, healing modalities and expansion of consciousness and all that for about 10 years now. And it just continues to be an unraveling scene of, like, you think you know something, and then you're like, oh wow, I really don't know shit. And that's really been the message with all the plant medicines and the ceremonies that we've done together, and the ones I've participated in has been, you don't know. So we're not coming here to be like, this is fact, believe us. This is just what we have been discussing, questioning. It really all comes down to being curious. We have a very healthy sense of curiosity about this whole human experience, really.
Yeah.
And so the moon is a quite deeply ingrained belief system.
Good night, moon.
Good night, moon. We all got it. We all heard it. Yeah, and so, we have quite an attachment to the moon. And so that's why we say it might be triggering, but we really are coming at this whole conversation out of just, hey, let's question things. Let's, take a look at things that might be, like you said, we might have been lied to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, really, there's a great potential for this conversation to really ask you to break down some deeply held belief systems. And I know that we've both felt that a lot. And the other sisters that I have transmitted this information with and to have also felt the same way, like, fuck, like, it's kind of like, it's really harsh at first, because it's like, well, I've wrapped up a lot of my identity as a woman in the moon. And
for so many reasons.
Like
astrology, the ritual, the
crystals,
our
blood, moon cycle, the 28 days of our moon cycle being the same as the orbital cycle of the moon. There's so many reasons why, as women, even women that aren't in the spiritual community, are still, we have this admiration and this, quite frankly, an obsession with the moon. Mm-hmm. And then it just has gone even deeper with women who are on a more spiritual, holistic side of life. We're really fucking obsessed with the moon. And I've been there. I've been obsessed with the moon. So this is coming from somebody who's practiced a lot of moon rituals and ceremonies and, worshipped the moon. So it does take quite a bit of breaking down to, like, open to this. So
we'll walk you through it.
Yeah, we're here for you. And we're still unraveling and learning it ourselves as well.
Yeah. So I think, like, just to get started, so like we said, we have a healthy sense of curiosity, and, like, you listening, like, a lot of my audience is pretty also, like, conspiracy minded or whatever.
I hate that word, but yeah.
I hate that word, I know, but it is, it is the word. So, like, there's, like, the questions about, like, the moon landing and all that, but I just want to talk about, like, start from the very beginning, which I guess is, like, questioning the moon itself,
as a physical body.
As a physical body, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's really, for me, where it all started several years ago. My best friend Izzy, who I know you've also interviewed on the podcast.
Episode 3.
Yeah. we have been talking for years about the moon as an alien base, potentially.
Right.
There's an old ass episode, I don't know if it came out in like 2013 or 14, it's pretty old, episode of Ancient Aliens that kind of opened up this conversation of like, is the moon a naturally occurring planetary body, or is it of some other origin?
Right.
And so that's like where my initial opening to this came from, and I've already had the belief system for several years that like, yeah, there's most likely aliens on the moon. It's some kind of base. We never see the backside of it. It, is shrouded in secrecy. We have all of these questions that have gone really mainstream about the moon landing and whether that was faked, whether that was some kind of Hollywood production. How come we haven't been back to the moon? We have all this space technology. How come we haven't studied it more in depth? Yet we're spending all this money to go to Mars.
Yeah.
So
and like the orbit of the moon not being like right, like it doesn't spin at all. It just stands the same.
Yeah.
It rang like a bell for 30 minutes or like a gong.
Yeah, like back in either late 60s or 70s. I'm not sure exact dates, but they dropped a satellite onto the moon, and when it hit the moon, it rang. Like a metal object would ring, or something that's hollow would ring. They said it sounded like a gong, and it had like a 30-minute reverb. So it's like there's just all these questions, about the physical presentation of the moon and how it doesn't behave like any other moons that we've studied in astronomy on other planets.
It's like mathematically perfect so that when an eclipse happens, it's like the exact size and blocks out the whole sun, which doesn't happen in other realms.
We've never found that on any other planets with any other moons.
I did like a little bit of research, which you can find all of this on the internet, especially if you use like DuckDuckGo as opposed to Google. But one video I listened to this morning, David Icke was talking about the moon, and he mentioned that they've done studies of like the chemicals on the moon, or like the particles, or I don't know, words are hard. Moon dust, yeah. And they found 2 types of uranium, like 236 and 237, or 267 and whatever, but that are not naturally occurring. And they asked one scientist, like from NASA or something, about it, and he was like, if I were to make a structure that would withstand all of the elements of space and like asteroids and all this shit hitting it and all of the elements of space, like those are the man-made chemicals or like compounds that I would use to build the moon. So like basically, if you do your research, like there's plenty of information out there that just is like questioning the physicality of the moon itself, or like where it came from and whether or not it's like actually a part of our Earth, or if there was a time where...
Yeah, which segues into the next kind of like thing that unraveled for me was I heard someone say, or I read some things at one point that was like the time before the moon. And I was like, what? And so there is written text and oral history from cultures all around the world that talk about the time before the moon. It's been documented by Aristotle, documented it. There's several other like Greek philosophers that documented it. There's scripture in the Bible, not that I really believe a whole lot of the Bible hasn't been tainted, but I mean it is an ancient text. And I was like gonna pull up the actual scripture, and I thought like I want to research this and sound all, but then I was like, you know what, fuck that. Like how I learn and how I like to transmit is like my source is not fucking Google. My source is source.
Same.
Like I go within and I tap into this information that's available to all of us in the Akashic record. Mm-hmm. We can all tap into this infinite Google.
And you don't have to know facts and be able to cite anything to have a fucking opinion. I'm sorry.
And like people like that, and that's fine. If it makes you feel better, you can. But yeah, so there's Bible scriptures. I think one of them's in like Jobs, and the other one's in I don't know what else. I don't read the Bible.
Feel free to look it up and put it in the comments.
But there is 2 Bible scriptures that reference the time before the moon. And then, like I said, there's oral history from a lot of indigenous and like Aboriginal tribes that talk about times before the moon. So there has been a lot of information that's been hidden and suppressed. We know that about basically the entire history of humans on Earth. And that's been one of them, is that there was many people and, cultures that believed that the moon was brought here at one time in history.
Right.
So, and, that brings us to why.
Yeah.
Why would they bring it here? And so some of the theory is to help stabilize the planet. Like prior, to the moon being here, we didn't have a lot of stable climate and wasn't really set up for life to thrive. And so, and there's a lot of questions about like if maybe it was brought in by benevolent beings to help us to advance as a species, to help control the tides of the ocean, to make agriculture and planting more routine and rhythmic. And those are questions we don't know. Those are things that we have no idea. But going back to the belief system about, well, is the moon a naturally occurring part of our solar system, or is it a body of matter that was potentially planted here?
Or a hologram, you mentioned.
Or a hologram.
Like there's
so many what ifs, and those are the things that we don't know right now. But for me personally, there's enough question. There's enough like things that don't add up.
Yeah.
Like, when there's like, oh, there's a couple questions about something, like, yeah, I don't need to know exactly how grass grows or like, all of these specifics, but I know that it's there and it happens. And so it's like the same thing. I don't need to know every specific about the moon to know what I feel when I tap into this information.
Yeah.
And it just feels like truth for me. There's just things that are like, come on, there's too many things at this point that are, pointing to some potential lies.
Right. And like the question, like we can't even really question it. Like anytime also like you say something and all of a sudden it's like, or censored or all of that also adds to my like questions. So the fact that this is so triggering and is so deeply embedded in our culture, and it's like, there's no coincidence that like Goodnight Moon is like probably the most popular children's book in the history of ever, besides like maybe Dr. Seuss, but he was canceled. But like, you know what I mean? Like it's just like from start to finish, it's just like so deeply programmed in us that's when I'm like, okay, this is weird. And then like the fact that there are so many secrets around it, and it's not like, anyone from NASA is out there like, we recognize that these chemicals or compounds aren't naturally occurring, but this is an explanation. Like there's no discussion, there's no clarification, there's no addressing it. It's just like secret.
Yeah.
So that's what makes me wonder, like, is there something sinister? Because it's so deeply embedded, you can't fucking question it, and no one's talking about it. And if you do talk about it, you're crazy.
Right.
So
yeah, I know. And the other theory or something to hypothesize is that maybe it wasn't originally something sinister, but it has been hijacked by sinister forces that are now using it for that purpose. Again, more things we don't know, but the fact that we're not allowed to question it really, from not only like a censorship and government standpoint, but also just from like a communal like
sister to sister
thing, is like the offense, like the audacity of you to question my moon, like and that kind of is another reason why it's like, oh well, anything that's that deeply entrenched in our consciousness, we have a responsibility to look at it, because what we're doing is really, in this new paradigm and the age of Aquarius, we're being asked to open our consciousness in deeper and more profound ways than we ever have before.
Right. And I think, like, we were going to talk about this at the end when we went through the outline, but I think it's important to talk about why this is important and who cares if the moon is fake. And something we had talked about is, like, the potential and very real possibility that like our energy can and is siphoned sometimes.
Absolutely.
Especially when we are opening up these realms of like ritual and magic and all of that, which is, you know, like, quite frankly, Satan's playground. Like, or like the darkness is like, they know those technologies.
Yeah,
are
absolutely.
arguably better than we do sometimes.
Absolutely.
So like, that's what, I don't know if I jumped too far ahead.
No,
but
it's fine. It doesn't matter. The
yeah.
sequence doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's so good. I don't care. We can free flow it all. But the whole, you know, thing is like taking even it a step back further than just the moon. In general, our energy is the most valuable currency there is. Right. It is not money. Everybody thinks it's all about money, and like money is a tool that, you know, both that everyone uses, both light and dark and all of that. But really, energy is the currency that they're after, and our consciousness and control of the birth-death portal, which is the ultimate, you know, energy portal. Well,
because if they can control the birth and death portal, then they can much easier control your whole human experience.
The whole experience.
If they get you right when you come in and right when you go out.
Yeah.
You know?
And so, like, you know, with starting with that as a foundation, the energy is currency. And then, like you said, understanding that there are powers and, you know, dark, negative, whatever you want to call it, forces that do understand the realms of magic, and especially as we have become more spirituality, rituals, ceremonies, magic, you know, sister circles, and all these types of things have really like gained popularity over the last 10 plus years with, I don't know, internet and all that, which is great. But it's also like we need to check in with, like, are we being handed these technologies sort of like we were handed the phones?
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, look what they gave us. And it's because obviously they know it's a mind control tactic, but were we kind of allowed, if you will, to have access to these spiritual practices in a more widespread way through the masses and through social media, because they realized that activating all of these women to harness their own personal power then opens the portal for them to then, like you said, siphon the energy.
Right.
Because we are such incredibly powerful beings, men and women, but humans, we do emit such a strong frequency and vibration, and especially if we're consciously cultivating the energy that we have within our body and our breath and our, you know, the prana, our mind, the thought frequencies. If we're consciously working to open portals ourselves, but we don't know how to protect the portals, that's really when entities that are not of the highest vibration can just like, zoop, just like you said. I like the word siphon. I literally imagine like a little tube coming down in the center of a circle and siphoning that energy out and taking it and using it for their own agenda.
Right. And if the moon is this false light, you know, this false thing that they have established as like whatever, then they condition us in our mind to see it as like, you know, beautiful, and we give ritual to it, and then we ritualize the fuck out of the moon. Like no other planetary body do we ritualize the way we ritualize the moon. And then like it's like tricking us, so like we think we're just like using the moon to like do our fucking manifest or whatever, but like we're ultimately using a false light, which is feeding the false light rather than feeding the truth, or like actually feeding ourselves. And so like in a sense we've been like duped or tricked into thinking that, and like, you know, it's just making me think about it this way, that like they probably are telling us that these things are possible, but in a sense it's like limiting it, because really like
so much more is possible.
Yeah.
Right.
If we weren't tied into that moon matrix, just, I don't know.
Totally. No, I totally agree. I think that, like, you know, the fact that we have created such ritual around the full moon, the orbital pattern of the cycle of the moon, the new moon, and particularly the full moon. And I'll jump to this, that like we have the full moon is a time where throughout all history people have been like, people go crazy on the full moon. It's a time where all the wolves are howling and the energy is heightened. It is like, shit's getting fucking crazy. It's the full moon.
Yeah, hospitals are more crazy. Yeah, there's like statistics about it.
Right, there's statistics about it, and then just we know. It's like, And so I feel like that is because there is this massive amount of light that is arguably fake light beaming down on our planet, and also this huge energetic charge, because regardless of if it's natural or not, it's fucking there. It's something. There's a thing there, and it carries an energy just like everything else. So there's a huge energetic pulse coming at us. There's this fake light, and then everyone's supposed to ritualize around that. And women are encouraged to offer their blood as a sacrifice to the moon,
It's called your moon cycle.
It's called your moon cycle. I have really done all this work in my vocabulary to switch to calling it a moon cycle over several years.
From a period.
Because the period, which I hate that fucking word. But now I've dropped the moon and I just call it my cycle. It's my cycle. It's not the moon's cycle. It's my fucking cycle. Like, I'm taking back my cycle. Right. And there has been a lot coming out over the last several years about offering our blood to the earth, instead of the moon or whatever, but still just kind of taking back our blood and our sacred fertility cycle, which ties into, back to what I was saying, everything is energy, and the woman's reproductive cycle and ability to form life, to carry life, and to birth life. It's unique to women, and then for some crazy reason, we're the ones that are obsessed with the moon. Why aren't men obsessed with the moon like we are, So it's definitely pretty shady to think of when you start really looking at how the cycle has, and women's reproduction and fertility has been weaponized. You've talked about it in previous podcasts with birth, and I know with Rach and Izzy, and we already know that birth has been weaponized, and now even more fertility in general. So bringing that all full circle back in is like, it's all tied to the moon because it has to do with our blood and our shedding of a part of our body that we are releasing and offering.
And I want to talk about that too, because I think, some people listen to this podcast are like all in on this spirituality, and other people are like, what the fuck are you talking about, Kala? But I just love you. You go, girl. And so the theory I read years ago about offering your blood to the earth was basically that the blood, the earth needs or craves or, is sustained in part by blood. And so, it's part of the system. And so one way we can serve the earth or live in harmony with the earth is to offer our cycle blood, our period blood, or whatever you want to call it, our monthly blood to the earth. But then, so that's how it's been forever. Women have had red tents where they just bled on the earth. That's how it used to be. And then, so now not only are we a lot of time, our blood has been taken from the earth because it's all wrapped up in tampons and pads and shit like that, but it's also, our cycles, even we're taught as little girls, are in line with the moon. It's just constantly programmed in. So in a sense, it's again, rather than this blood going to the natural occurring earth that has been here and holds us, it's going to this God fucking knows what, and it's not even by our conscious choice, because we're not told about all of this, and it's just our moon cycle, we bleed with the moon, and then it's just automatically going to there. Whereas if we were to give this money, and so then the earth, basically, point being is, then the earth is forced to get this blood other ways, whether it be through war or bloodshed, basically, because we're so disconnected from the earth. And so that's just like another perspective to think about, is like, you know, do we even like, and who the fuck, like, why the moon? Like, what the moon ever done for me? Like, the sun does so much for me.
Oh, God.
The earth does so much for me. What the fuck does the moon do? Like, the moon doesn't even do anything besides control the tides and, like, make people crazy every 2 weeks.
That's it. And it's a lot to control the tides, obviously. And,
yeah, well, I'm not saying, whatever.
But the
like,
thing is, too, that, like, our cycle is, interestingly enough, if it's a normal cycle, whatever, it is in this 28-ish day pattern that the moon's in. So we are intrinsically tied to the moon, whether we like it or not. Like, I'm not trying to tell you, like, you're not going to be
bleeding on the full moon,
bleeding by it, that it's not going to affect you. You're made of water. If that bitch can control the entire ocean, definitely the moon is having an effect on us.
Right.
It's definitely controlling the waters in our body. Not controlling, but it's affecting the water in our body. And so, I do want to save the sun thing for the end, because it's just like my fucking closer.
Okay.
But, you know, the moon doesn't do a lot for us. And also, the part that I wanted to mention is that in agriculture, and more so like permaculture, or like a more holistic approach to agriculture, it has been passed down through time memorial that the best planting time is at the new moon. Mm-hmm. And that's just curious to me, because it's like, oh, you mean when things are the way they're supposed to be, when you can see the stars? And that's the other thing.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, is that false light inhibits our ability to see and connect with the stars. Mm-hmm. You know, you can really only see the stars really well on the new moon.
Yeah.
That when there's that fake light in the sky, it's really distorting the view of the stars that we have, which is, I think, another curious thing of like, do they not want us to look at the stars?
Yeah.
You know, or whatever. I mean, cities do the same thing. Another reason.
More false light, though.
More false light. But
and did you finish?
Yeah, planting on the new moon specifically, to me, is pointing again to like the energy signature of the moon not actually being favorable to life, to seeds sprouting, reproduction.
Wow, that's a good point.
You know, procreation. Like, if we're supposed to put the seed in the ground on the new moon when it's dark, what does that tell us? That's the most favorable conditions for life to grow. So, again, I mean, there's so many things now that when people ask me, like, well, you do still, you know, honor the moon, or how do you feel about the moon now then with these new belief systems? I'm like, well, I really enjoy the new moon. Yeah. So, like, if I'm going to gather with sisters or something, it's going to be on the new moon. Yeah. Because I don't want to have the fake light.
Yeah.
But
even someone I follow on Twitter called Kenzie the Reminder, he's awesome. He talks about born day fasting. And he always talks about born day fasting and new moon fasting. And, like, again, it's just, like, the focus on the new moon. And he reminds me of, like, someone who's been around forever. But one thing I want to say, too, about the moon and just this ritual is, like, because, you know, in astrology, there's all sorts of transits that are happening all of the time. Like, Mercury retrograde is happening right now, and there's Saturn returns and all sorts of stuff. But just, like, pointing out, like, how much ritual is around the moon when, like, you don't see the same sort of energy for, like, Saturn or Jupiter or all of these other planets that also have an effect on us. And that just makes me question it too, because, like, Satanists and, you know, these things, their whole thing is ritual. Like, that's how they get their power, is through ritual, and they have to tell you what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just a really powerful way to get people, especially very strong, powerful, independent, magical women, to ritualize something every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just free access to the portal, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're not careful and mindful of these things. And this has been confirmed by, I won't mention the name of this sister, but I have a really deep, close friend of mine who, I mean, she's tapped the fuck in. She's like all really, you know, she's on the medicine path, and she has done a lot of work in areas of consciousness and healing and all the things. But she was a moon dancer. And if you're not familiar, there's sun dance, which is a traditional Lakota practice that is practiced now all around the globe, but it's, you know, in honor of the sun. I'll get into it a teeny bit at the end. But there's also moon dance, which has gained a lot of popularity, and it's a very, very powerful ritual, and takes place, I know the one that she's participates in South America, and while sun dance is open to both genders, most sun dances are, some are male only, but moon dance is women only. And she reflected to me that upon further investigation of her own involvement in this, how actually weird it feels because of the intensity of the ritual and the whole, there's just a lot. There's a lot. I don't want to, you know, some of these things are so private and sacred I wouldn't repeat, but there's definitely a major portal being opened when we are ritualistically circling, dancing, singing, all
howling.
These things that we do, howling, burning things around the full moon particularly. Mm-hmm. There's a major portal that's opened, and the access to that portal can be very easily tapped into by entities or energies that are not of the highest light. Right. So, yeah. So she's recently had to unravel these belief systems. I know it's been quite the journey for her because she was so deeply entrenched with this. And, you know, that's kind of why we gave this trigger warning thing, is I know a lot of our sisters are deeply entrenched with the moon, and especially like if you've either got your IG name as something with the moon or Luna, you've created a business tattoos of the moon. If you know, the moon is tattooed on me twice. I have 2 fucking tattoos of the moon. Not just the moon by itself. It's woven into other tattoos. But, you know, if you've created a business model around the moon and monthly moon circles or anything, it's like this new potential information or, you know, way of opening might ask a lot of you to really, like, this sister had to do quite a bit of personal digging because her identity was wrapped into being a moon dancer. Mm-hmm. You know, mm-hmm. I'm a moon dancer.
Yeah.
And that is a very powerful, honorable, respectable thing to call yourself, you know, and if you're somebody who, like I said, has the business around it or something, or have created a livelihood around the moon, that can even be more of a kind of like, well, fuck, what do I do now? You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what, because that's a good point, and, you know, we've both had to kind of look at our own way, like you said, like, where do we go from here? And, like, the moon obviously still exists, so how have you shifted, and, like, do you still honor the moon, or you said the new moon?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've shifted in that, like, I still recognize the moon. It's there. I still think it's beautiful when a full moon rises. I'm not going to lie. I don't look at that and be like, wow, that's beautiful. Yeah. You know? But just the energy that I give it, the thoughts that I give it, I don't charge my crystals under it anymore. I charge my crystals in the sun now, you know, or just cleanse in running living water. Yeah. But I don't put my crystals under the moon anymore. And I don't particularly like to be outside on a full moon. I'll tell you that. That light kind of feels like, ugh, like I don't like it. Yeah. And I just don't really pay much attention to it. Like, I don't really know, like, I know roughly when the full moon's going to happen every month because I can fucking look in the sky. Yeah. But I don't, like, tend to look up the dates anymore, or plan my life around it, or plan events around it.
Right.
I just don't really give it the attention. It's just kind of like, I don't know.
It's the thing.
Yeah, and I don't really like pay attention to the sign that it's in.
Right.
Like, oh my God.
I'm going to release this bitch before a full moon. It's probably, it's going to be a full moon. I only know because I'm flying that day, but Wednesday, October 20th. And I'm releasing this Monday, October 18th.
Sorry.
Sorry. But I wanted to ask you too, like, so I don't know what it's going to be in that day though. Libra, I think. But so I was talking to someone else about this topic, and they were like, well, what do you do about astrology? Like, you're like, my moon's in Sagittarius. Like, how, or you know what I mean? Like, how does
astrology affect this belief system?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's still there, and it's still a body, and it's still in a sign, and it still affects us, like I said. So the astrology of the moon doesn't really change for me, honestly. It's the representation of what it means energetically and spiritually that changes. So the moon is still in whatever sign it's in, and it's still represented in your birth chart because it was there when you were born.
Yeah.
It still has the archetypal effect that the planetary bodies in their specific zodiac sign have on you, or on us as, a planet. So I'm not debating that the moon is still affecting us, and the astrology doesn't, for me, change much. It's because it's still a physical object that's in the sky, that is orbiting the planet, that is in an orbital pattern with all the other planets and the zodiac. So, yeah, it doesn't, for me, affect it that much at all, really. It doesn't affect the astrology at all. It still is what it is. Again, it's just how much attention am I giving it?
It's back in line with the rest of your chart, really. Like, you're giving it as much energy as you give to the rest of your chart, rather than it being this holy grail that's got all this ritual and shit around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it also, just by knowing this and thinking about it, then you're kind of can break the spell, and you may think about this and research on your own and be like, you know what, I still fucking love the moon, and good for you. But at least by having this conversation, we can bring consciousness to it, because right now it feels like we're all just kind of doing this fucking moon thing because that's what everybody's been doing. You know what I mean? So it's let's just take a step back and consider all of these possibilities, and so then we can decide consciously where we want to put our energy.
And that's what it keeps coming back to. Where do we want to put our energy? Because energy is the currency. Energy is everything. They want our energy. We want each other's energy. Energy is, everyone's trying to get the energy. How can I have more energy? Energy. Everyone's drinking fucking energy drinks. And it's all about optimizing energy. And it's because prana, life force, chi, whatever you want to call it, energy is the most powerful and the most
basic, fundamental currency.
Yeah, exactly.
Energy goes where attention flows, or energy flows where attention goes.
All that.
What you give attention to, it's called paying attention. All of the things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, those...
That's why they want to keep us afraid, too, is because that's literal energy.
Yes.
There could be demons on the moon feeding off of our literal fear energy, or...
which is a very, very probable situation that we're in, because why is fear so heavily pushed as an agenda,
Right.
Yeah. We're not going to get into any of that today, no. But definitely the energy that you give it, I think, is the most important thing in quote-unquote breaking up with the moon. The moon's always going to be there. It's going to be like your ex that you have fucking kids with. It's not going to go away, okay? It's there. But, like, you just don't give it as much energy anymore. Or you don't have, like, a fucking intimate relationship with it. You still have a relationship with it.
That's a great analogy.
You know,
yeah.
It's there. You got to see it a lot. And, you know, it still affects your life and all of that. But, like, you're not having sex with it anymore.
So that's, like, perfect.
Yeah, I mean, that just happened right now. So I'm pretty happy about
that.
But, yeah, the fact that these belief systems are in question at all is just, to me, confirmation that things are on a really accelerated pace of change, and we're just not doing things the way that we used to. We're being asked to unlearn everything that we fucking thought we knew, to break down belief systems, conditionings, religious programs, social constructs, blah, 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 blah. And the moon's just one of those many things that we're, you know, being asked to look at. Or maybe you're not being asked to, but if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are being asked to look at it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, it's not to, like, come down on anybody or to be like, shame on you for ritualizing the moon. But for me, you know, that old adage rings true of, like, once you know better, you do better. So, like, if this information lands in any kind of way, even if it's a triggering way at first, but it's like one of those things that's like, damn, it's triggering the fuck out of me. I don't want to believe it, but, like, then I just invite you to sit with it for a while and just, like, feel into it. Really, it's a lot of feeling.
Yeah.
It
is the moon.
It is the moon.
And I mean, like, this journey, like I said at the beginning, this has been a year coming for us, you know, like, and it's been
with the deeper understanding,
right?
Yeah, but many years of, like, what is the fucking moon? Is it alien based? Right. But yeah, the deeper kind of blood sacrifice, energetic pull of the moon. This whole moon topic has definitely really ramped up in the last year.
Yeah. And I think that, like, you know, for me, it's been interesting because, like, even just on that full moon, I'm going to go visit a friend on October 20th, and they were like, oh, it's a full moon, like, we should do a thing. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do a thing. And so, you know, I just recognize, like, the challenge it is in, like, you know, like, sometimes I feel a little bad. I'm like, sorry for waking y'all up to this shit, like, because it's not, like, the easiest stuff to integrate. And it does take, like, some recalibrating to recalibrate your language and how you show up. And, you know, like, you brought up, like, you can still go have fun with your friends under the full moon, and, like, but just not ritualize it, you know, like, we're not going to go outside and be like, hum da dun da, like, under the moon, you know what I mean? Like, and just figuring out ways that you can show up, you know, like, still kind of in the, I don't know.
Honestly, I think, too, like, if you're a sister that's listening to this and it lands or resonates for you, I'm going to be straight up, you have kind of a responsibility to wake up the other sisters. Because several sisters that I've talked to about this, in varying degrees of their spiritual journey, some highly, like, deep into it, or some that are just barely getting onto it, the ones that it has resonated with, I've had, like, several people reach out to me, like, later after we've had the conversation or whatever, and they're just like, dude, this, like, changed everything for me. Like, it's really made a huge impact in my life. So I feel like if it makes a huge impact in your life, then we have that personal responsibility to then share. And, you know, it's not like you have to fucking make a podcast about it, but you can talk to your sister friend about it, you know, one person, or, you
just
know.
even open up the conversation, you know, and just be like, what are your thoughts on the moon?
Yeah.
You
or
know?
Maybe if you have a little girl, if you're a mama, you could reframe how you educate your daughter on the moon.
Right.
That's really changing things, right? It's all about the next generations. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can restructure your relationship with the moon. It is a breakup, but it's not, like, you know, it doesn't have to be a toxic relationship. It can be a conscious uncoupling.
I should call it a
consciously uncoupling with the moon. I'm cracking myself up right now.
Dude, I actually do want to call it that.
That'd be cool.
I think it's hilarious.
But yeah, you know, I feel like this whole thing about what it means to be an awakened woman on the spiritual journey, what it means to be in this community of sisterhood and brothers. You know, there's brothers that do things for the full moon, all kinds of fucking festivals and shit that take place on the full moon.
Yeah.
But, you know, so I'm specifically talking to the sisters, but it's definitely like, you know, it's a constant unlearning of things, because we all come to this community for different, but I think similar reasons of wanting to heal traumas, you know, find like-minded souls and hearts, shed old conditionings, parental shit, religious shit from our childhoods, and just the way, you know, that we've been systematically repressed and oppressed for thousands of years in this lifetime and others. Heal ancestral stuff. So we all come into these circles for these reasons, and, you know, have found potentially a lot of healing around the moon, because it's been a gateway for the sister circles and, you know, the connections that we've made in this community. So I don't know exactly where I was going with that. I kind of had a stoner moment and lost that. I do feel like it's just important to say that it's not like you have to unravel your connections with sisters that you've made in moon circles, or, you know, you don't have to stop gathering and ritualizing life.
Right.
But, you know, here's what I'll bring in, like, what do you want to pay ritual to? Because it could open a really powerful portal if you all wanted to sit under the sun and, you know, receive those uploads, downloads, transmissions from the solar energy. And this is something that came in for me personally recently. While I was laying next to a river, I was laying on some rocks and kind of in like a little mini back bend, and I could feel like I was trying to tap into all my chakras and, you know, doing a little bit of like massaging of my sacral chakra, my womb, and I was like moving up, and then I moved into my solar plexus, and the sun was like bright that day, and I was like having this whole moment about, it's called solar plexus. The solar plexus, by way of the name, is clearly asking us to receive sun on it, yet we're wearing shirts and bras that are covering our solar plexus all the time. So that could be something that you could bring into ritual with your sisters if you wanted to start, you know, honoring the sun in a different way. Another thing I've heard a lot of people saying is that it's really hard for them to be in the sun. Like, the sun is hot, and we've been taught that the sun burns you, and you have to put on sunscreen, and, you know, don't get too much sun. But like, the sun gives us every fucking thing we need. Everything. It is the source of all life. We could not be here without the sun. We could definitely survive without the moon, but we need the sun. We need it.
Yeah.
For photosynthesis, to grow all of our plants.
Yeah.
It creates all life.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And there's definitely a dark agenda against the sun right now. Like, as many people have known, like, BG out here trying to block out the sun with chemicals, chemtrails, all that shit. Like,
yeah.
That we could do a whole other podcast about the sun.
We have.
But that's the truth. Like, the sun is the light. It's the giver of life. I learned that in the peyote ceremony, like, watching the sunrise the next day. Like, I was like, holy fuck. The sun is life. Is life. I need the sun. Like,
that's what we call it, Padre Sol, because it's the soul. It's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, that's the thing. Like, we don't see as much sun worship, or, I mean, in a lot of cultures you do, like with Sundance or things like that. But like, in this mainstream spiritual matrix, it's all moon.
Yeah, a lot of moon.
A lot of moon.
Yeah, and some people are talking about the sun from the health benefits, right?
Right.
Get the vitamin D, get your 20 minutes in the sun, or whatever it is. But like, more forming a ritual or a spiritual practice centered around the sun, of like, when you rise in the morning, like going out to see the sun and look directly into it. Yeah, it's fucking hard. Yeah, you don't need to put sunglasses on. You can do it. Like, just blink a little bit, like whatever you need to do. But there's codes in there, and there's activations in the sun that you're not going to get from the moon. And it came in really hard for me when I had the honor, privilege to to attend the Sundance with my partner this year. And it's just so many moments during the Sundance were like these like epiphanies that I was having about what we give our energy to as a whole, not just the moon, but even astrology. I have studied astrology for years. I have taught astrology. I have a deep relationship with astrology. But like, again, as beings of the earth, like, where are we placing our energy? Is it always in this like outward, like way out there, like Saturn's way out there and Pluto's way the fuck out there, and all these planets are way out there, and the sun is right there, and the sun's controlling all of it in the solar system. Every single planet is being affected by the sun. It's our central star. And it's just that, like, you know, I think not only has the sun not been ritualized in the way that it really should be, but it's sort of, again, it's been demonized. It's too
Sunblock.
hot, sunburns and block controls and all these weird things about it. So, yeah, just really coming back to, like, what's important to ritualize are the elements, the earth, the air, the fire, the water, and the sun happens to be fire. But yeah, and the sun, you know, that's it. This is the building blocks of life, and like really simplifying this entire spiritual journey. And there's so many like new age modalities and techniques and energy work and sound and yoga and the things that you can learn about, that you can ritualize, that you can use to create magic and spells and open portals and manifest and womifest and do all of that. They're endless, right? But bringing it all back home down to the basics, it's elemental. It's earth, air, fire, water, and the sun is the central star. So it can be all a lot more simple than we make it. And I think a lot of that is tied into the, you know, whole spiritual community being corporatized, capitalized, colonized. But
yeah,
that's
it would
another
be,
podcast.
That's a whole other podcast. I'm like, I don't know who I'm gonna have on to talk about that, but that is the whole spiritual matrix. So damn.
Yeah.
I feel like we have some notes in front of us I'm checking, but I feel like it really is like we've touched on it, and I mean, we could talk for hours about all of it, but really, like Lisa Marie said, it is just like a feeling thing. And, you know, I myself am never, like, I can't sit there and rattle off a million facts, but, like, I can tell you how I feel in my solar plexus or in my heart when I'm told information. And listening about the moon does make me feel, like it feels not good in my belly. It feels like, ugh, like a little bit. So just sit with it and see how it feels for you. And, you know, like try different things. Like try sitting in the sun or charging your crystals in the sun, or just seeing how the sun feels and like changing our relationship to the sun. Like I definitely feel like since I've gone through this, like I don't get sunburnt as intensely or as easily. And like, I just feel like I have a better relationship with the sun, too.
Yay.
Yeah.
Sun prana. One of my dearest friends, you mentioned her, I think, in the beginning. Or no, actually, that was in the one that didn't record. But one of my good friends, and actually the person who facilitated our eventual meeting through the gram, was Ashley Albrand, OG Yogini, Infinite Source Yoga. She is the one that introduced me to this term that I love, which is solar penetration. And it's literally opening yourself, your whole yoni, your AKA that's your vagina if you don't know, but yeah, opening yourself naked to the sun and allowing yourself to get penetrated by the solar energy. It's a penetration. That's a penetration that doesn't go inside.
It feels nice.
It
we
feels
did that.
so good. Yeah, it's kind of it's gaining some hype with like the butthole sunning. I've seen like people in Instagram influencers sunning their butthole, so that makes me really excited. And
same thing
when I do it now, something I made up because I was like, oh, it feels so good, just laying out there, just like, oh, give it to me, give it to me, sun daddy,
sun daddy,
sun daddy,
sun daddy.
So yeah, I mean, hey, the other thing is that forming a relationship with the sun is also helping us to heal the masculine wounding. Because, right, the moon is represented as the mother, but I don't like that because it's not the mother. The fucking earth is our mother.
Yeah.
The moon is not our mother. It's not Mother Moon.
No.
Like, it's not even a grandmother. It didn't give birth to anything. It doesn't create life. It doesn't sustain life. It doesn't have any water on it. Like, how did it get to have the title of mother? Is it because it's a mothership? Or is it because, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't, I don't like how it gets this honorary title of mother. Like, you ain't my mom.
Yeah, Earth is mom.
Earth is mama, and son is daddy. Like, you know?
That's true.
So I definitely feel like knowing that we are in this cycle of patriarchal crushing down, patriarchy falling. We're in an 8-year portal right now, I think maybe 2-3 years into the Chiron cycle in Aries. So a big healing of our masculine energy. Pretty much every woman I know is going through healing of her father issues. And so I think that the sun can help us with that because it does represent a masculine, strong, powerful energy that we can connect with the masculine in a different way.
Yeah, and like that masculine energy that provies. Like the sun
Sustains.
provides and sustains and fucking holds us. Like every day the sun wakes up and is like, "What up, bitch? I love you.
Got you.
Like I
Let
got
me grow
you
you some food today." And that's really what it's all about. It's the plants, the food, the earth, the water. Again, the elements: earth, air, fire, water.
Yep.
It's pretty like basic. We've really overcomplicated shit here in Western spirituality. A lot of spirituality and religious framework over many continents and time periods have overcomplicated everything as a way to distort and distract us from our own personal power, our own personal connection with source, as source ourselves, source incarnate, you know, we are it. And that's all super cliche now, you know, and God forbid you get into a conversation with, you know, a spiritual Christian and they'll tell you that God's not within you. But, you know, we are God, goddess, spirit, all of it. And we are experiencing ourselves as 3D beings this time, but we really are multidimensional. You know, the physical body is a representation of the third dimension, but our consciousness is able to grasp onto way more dimensional realities than we've been given the knowledge to. We just don't know that we can yet. Some of us are starting to know. But
well, do you want to pull? I feel like we've given the sisters and brothers some pretty good.
Yeah, there it is. That's it, you know. And Cal and I are both, I know, available for this conversation in real life or on the interwebs.
Yes.
Because it is something that I like to talk about. So if you want to like send me a DM or whatever, if you have a question.
I'll put Lisa Marie's contact information, like her. I'll probably link your. Do you want people to message you on Instagram? You
whatever.
Don't care? Yeah. I'll link your Instagram.
Instagram, Telegram are both the same for me. They're Medicina Mommy 22.
Yeah. Well, I'd love if you pulled a card for the collective just to wrap up this. Yeah,
so this is a deck called Earth Warriors by Alana Fairchild, and then the artwork is the best part, which is by Isabel Mariposa Galactica. It's really beautiful art.
The art is amazing.
So yeah, we will just tap into what Spirit wants to be transmitted to the dear familia that is listening to this, tuning into this transmission. If you're listening or watching, I invite you to close your eyes and take a moment to receive this message. The card is Lina, and it says, "What must be, shall be." And the art, very interestingly, it's a skull And the moon phases are on the side.
Right?
So the card number is 7, if you care about numerology. But it's actually interesting because I haven't pulled this card before.
There, if you're watching, you can see it.
There. Yeah, okay, so this is a new message that I have not received nor transmitted before. Lena, what must be shall be. You have beautiful dreams and inspired bold ambitions. You are guided to believe that they are a natural expression of your soul, something that is meant to be. Life will support you in the expression of those dreams and ambitions, even in the moments where it seems to be struggle rather than support that you are experiencing. The process for transformation into full maturity involves learning how to grow through light and through darkness back to the light again. You will always find your way back to the light. Have faith in yourself and what must be. Dedicate yourself to what you love without hesitation. If you are experiencing loss or change, have faith. Sometimes things happen that seem to be working against us. It is only later that they show themselves to have been valuable ways by which we acquired the greater faith, courage, and determination that were necessary to the fulfillment of our purpose. Know that your destiny is unfolding, and you are moving through circumstances that are ultimately going to help you become your soul in fullness and splendor. Keep going. Everything happening in your life is helping you to fulfill your divine potential. Know that any darkness will give way to light. Lighten up, fam!
Lighten up, fam!
It's all about the light.
That was all about the light. And one thing we do know for sure is that the sun is true, naturally occurring light. So I liked how it said from light to dark, back to light again, because it kind of feels like how we're going is like, you know, at least for me, like I was super in on the moon. I was like, the moon, yes. And then I kind of, you know, it's like sad and you're in the darkness because you're like, oh man, like what the fuck, the moon's not real. And then you're back to the light again with the sun.
Yeah.
And just so much else, like the rest of the card about how it applies to like your personal life and shit. But
everything. So stay strong, people. Keep the faith. Keep your energy high. And even when it's not high, keep it for yourself. Mm-hmm. Whatever energy that you're experiencing, it's yours and only yours. Mm-hmm. It's not for anyone else or any other beings other than you. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Lisa Marie. That was a great conversation. Yay. And like she said, we'll, you know, I'll put her Instagram, my Instagram, so you can message us if you have questions. But we invite you to just sit with it and feel into it and trust your own intuition and your own guidance because you're the guru.
Yeah, indeed. Aho.
Aho. Love you.
Love you.
Funk past J's and face of blunt ashtrays and skate with punk kids. I still chase the some bad days. I'm lacing up half cabs and shake John spliffs. Whatever happened to rap, it should rest in peace to Mac, and I'm here to raise it from the dead. Cause drugs ain't cool, kid, plug you with that new shit. Turn water to wine and break bread. And if I said this all the future, would you trust I told the truth, or would you run away and tell my whole fan base? Cause sooner or later, kid, they'll take your human nature and they'll burn you at the stakes while the band plays. So, in the last words, better speak up now. I said, why do birds sing? What's a king without a crown? They all stood in silence while they listened to the sound of a madman reason with the demons he found. You can't lock up ideas, we don't even exist. I just live through the speakers and the beats that we kick. Is this forbidden fruit from the Garden of Eden? Is it freedom of speech, or am I speaking for freedom?